Here's what you should keep in mind. A quick checklist for when you're breaking a fast. No frills, nothing fancy. And if you don't want to watch through an entire video, which I recommend you do so you learn, if you look in the description, there is a link to download a free PDF version of this, but also with a little bit of an explanation. I have my intermittent fasting book that releases in Q1 of 2022. So this is sort of a little chunk of it. So you can get a little sneak peek of the book, but also get my cheat sheet in terms of breaking your fast. You can carry it with you, have it on your phone, whatever. Makes it super simple. So that link is down below in the description just to make it easy. But let's kind of break down what we have here. I have it divided into proteins, carbs, fats, and then also some optional supplements if you wanted to add that in. With proteins, if you consume meat, lean meats, okay? Do not go high fat cuts of meat, and I'll explain why in just a little bit. The best meats that you could be using: chicken breast, turkey breast, pork chops, and pork tenderloin. Okay, why these? Because they are rich in thiamine, especially the pork. Okay, we do want to have thiamine when we're coming out of a fast because it helps us out with not only carbohydrate metabolism in general, but we tend to find ourselves a little bit lower in thiamine after a fast, especially a longer fast. Not as big of a deal with like a 16-hour fast, but these are going to be the lean meats you want to have. Someone my size, I usually have 6 to 8 ounces right when I break my fast, keeping it very lean. If you go the fish route, you need to have something like sockeye salmon. It's leaner. Okay, it's leaner than the other kinds of salmon. Cod, which is pretty lean. Halibut, Dover sole, or tuna. And don't worry about the whole mercury thing, okay? People kind of blow that out of proportion. Tuna is also very high in selenium, which cancels out some of the mercury issue, okay? Because selenium can actually bind to mercury, allowing the body to deal with it better. And there's new, pretty compelling evidence coming out in that world. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that, especially if you're not having it like more than 3-4 times per week anyway. Supplemental forms of protein if you're on the go or anything like that. Pea or hemp protein shakes. Okay, obviously you want to go for whole foods whenever you possibly can, but a lot of times I'm on the road, so I'll use pea or a pea hemp blend. Okay, then we have whey protein isolate as the next best. Again, whey protein isolate is going to be a bigger insulin spike that you get from protein, so just keep that in mind. With either of these options, add essential amino acids to them, okay? Essential amino acids, not necessary, but it does make the protein more bioavailable and it increases the absorption, it increases the protein synthesis. I also recommend adding some collagen into the mix because collagen really is starting to be pretty powerful in the world of just, well, joint, hair, skin, nails, but also some other functions of the body that are pretty important when it comes down to gut. So it definitely doesn't hurt to add collagen right after you break a fast to support the gut mucosal layer. A lot of the things I talk about on this list, like some of the supplemental stuff, like the proteins and the collagen, you can get through Thrive Market. They are today's video sponsor. So they're an online membership-based grocery store. So down below in the description, there's also a link to go get 25% off your first order with Thrive Market and also get a free gift. So you log on to Thrive Market, you can shop for all kinds of foods, you can sort by different categories, by gluten-free, by keto, by paleo, whatever, and then it just gets delivered to your doorstep. So I've been using them for about 4 or 5 years now, and they've been a sponsor on this channel for that same amount of time. So they are utterly awesome, and that link is down below. And thank you, Thrive, for being a sponsor on this channel. Vegetarian and vegan options. Egg whites are still okay if you're vegetarian. I would prefer, obviously, a more substantial source of protein. In this case, not that egg whites aren't substantial, but there's just more vitamins and mineral profiles that you're gonna get out of regular meat. If you do egg whites, add some essential amino acids to improve that, again, bioavailability. Vegan options, hempe, tempeh, and natto. Okay. You're gonna bag on this because it's soy, but I'm really not worried about it, especially when it goes through that fermentation process, breaking down the oxalates, breaking down the phytic acid, breaking down the things that really would make it a problem. And if that's a staple of your diet already, I just wanna see those fermented forms so it's breaking it down, not straight like tofu or some other kind of soy. Okay, carbs. Not everyone's gonna have carbs. I understand a lot of people combine keto and intermittent fasting, but let's pretend for a second you're not doing keto. The carbs are very limited. I recommend fruit that is higher in fructose. And you're probably saying, Thomas, you talk about not having a lot of fructose because it can contribute to a fatty liver, or it's really bad when it comes down to fat storage. That is true if you're having more than like 30, 40 grams, right? We're talking about having like 20, 25 grams of carbs coming from fructose. So what I did here is I took the fruits that have the highest fructose to glucose ratio. We don't want a lot of glucose, we want more fructose. So in this case, I have pears, apples, grapefruit, which you could have quite an abundance of because it's a low carb content, strawberries, which you could have quite an abundance of as well, and mangoes. You don't need to load up on this. I'm talking like 3/4 of a cup or so, but if you're really craving those carbs, have them. You don't have to, by the way. This is completely optional, whether you're keto or not keto. You don't have to have the carbs. Some people just want that fruit, they want that carb, or they want that sweetness after fast, and I totally get it. If you're advanced, and I say this because it is important, if you've been fasting for a while and you understand like how you feel when you have a glucose spike, and you understand that and you can kind of control it a little bit more and you can control your appetite afterwards, I'm okay with having these clean kind of items to break a fast. Rice cakes, baked potatoes, or cooked parsnips. Why these specifically? Because they're very high glycemic. Sounds crazy, but when you break your fast, if you know what you're doing, operative words, if you know what you're doing and you're more advanced, having a big spike in insulin along with your protein is not a bad idea. It's just like the old theory of after a workout, you're insulin sensitive. So carbs and protein after your workout to improve that glucose uptake and improve the protein uptake. Same kind of thing after a fast. I just don't want you plummeting afterwards and then like raiding the pantry like a maniac, okay? So things you want to avoid regardless, okay? You're gonna want to avoid heavy starches, things that break down slow. It can mess up the gut, and it can also mess up the bell curve of your glycemic and kind of your blood sugar, essentially. Okay, then we want to avoid high fiber at this point. I love fiber, I am the fiber king, but there is a time and a place for it, and right after breaking a fast is certainly not the time. It is hard on the gut, so please avoid it. High glycemic load, which is essentially another way of saying don't have a lot of carbs, don't pile them on top of each other. We don't want to load up with starch. These are all very fast absorbing. Rice cakes are fast absorbing because the rice is puffed and the glucose molecules separate away from being just a starch chain. Same thing when you heat a potato. When you heat something, it expands, molecules expand. Parsnips, same kind of thing. Sneaky parsnips, because you wouldn't think they are. Fat, minimal fat. In fact, make a concerted effort to not have fat in the equation because it's not the time and place. You don't want to have to try to crank out pancreatic lipase and crank up just like the mechanical digestion of fats right now. You just want to absorb your proteins, absorb your carbs, and get back on the road, right? Okay, so if you do have some fats, a small amount of omega-3s are not going to be bad. They do not seem to affect what are called lipopolysaccharides. Okay, they don't affect the leaching of lipopolysaccharides into the bloodstream. I'm going to show you the details. LPS, lipopolysaccharides, bad. If we consume a bunch of saturated fat, right when we break a fast, it can trigger the production of or the leakage, I should say, of lipopolysaccharides. It triggers a little bit of distress in the gut because they're hard to break down. Small amounts of omega-3s, and yes, even small amounts of omega-6s are really not that bad after breaking a fast because they don't trigger that lipopolysaccharide response. But I still think you should keep them minimal. Why add them in if you don't need them? And obviously avoid trans fats. Just don't even touch them anyway. Terrible for visceral fat, terrible for all kinds of things. Be careful with MCT oil. If you know what you're doing, sure, but make sure you have a toilet nearby and make sure you have a seatbelt on that toilet and make sure you have toilet paper because right after you break a fast, having some MCT oil is going to be intense. It's going to be a wild ride, but if you know what you're doing and you're seasoned with it and you can handle it, it can upregulate that ketone production and actually make you feel pretty good. But again, you gotta know what you're doing. And use some caution with monounsaturated fats, even olive oil, avocado oil, right when you break a fast. Could be a little bit of a trip to the bathroom. Anyway, now some optional supplements. Optional, do not have to take them. People bag on me because they say I've talked about supplements with fasting. You don't have to take these. Okay, fish oil. And the kinds of fish oil I would recommend would be cod liver oil, so you get the bioavailable vitamin A and bioavailable vitamin D, okay, along with the omega-3s. Krill oil and calamine oil, lower down the food chain, easier to synthesize, utilize. Magnesium is one that I would recommend after a fast. It is a great one. 3 forms you could take: glycinate or malate, in this case actually like dimagnesium malate, or magnesium threonate. Okay, glycinate might put you to sleep a little bit more, make you feel calm. Malate's just kind of a general one, and threonate might give you a little bit more like a little bit of a brain feel. Cinnamon, okay, that can help modulate cortisol a little bit, but also with cinnamon there's a potential blood sugar modulation effect. And then finally benfotiamine, which is also vitamin B1 or thiamine in a different form, if you're not able to get this stuff in, because it can help you synthesize and utilize that. Okay, so don't forget to check out the link down below, get the downloadable PDF, and as always, I will see you tomorrow.